Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Bowie, and welcome to another episode of Society AMAs. Today, we're joined by a super special guest, Casey Armstrong, the CMO at ShipBob. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That was a pretty cool intro you guys have going on.
Thanks. Yeah, it's all the creative team. They do some great work here, but
I feel like we should be at a lounge or something.
Let's just imagine we are. We got the background, we got the brick, and we're just chilling. So, yeah, so we have a community of brilliant SaaS marketers that curated some questions specifically for you based on your impressive background from a lot of working with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, from Mavenlink to BigCommerce and now at ShipBob. So we can't wait to dive into the questions. And yeah, you ready to go?
Let's do this.
All right. First question is from Kelly Pugh. I hope I'm saying that last name right, or it might be Pug, I'm not sure. What do you look for when you're hiring for a demand generation leader for your team?
Great question, Kelly, because I'm actually hiring a demand gen leader right now. I mean, demand generation is obviously like the common term for it.
Mm-hmm.
The word that I'm looking for with it is demand creation.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people that are, really good at finding ways to, let's say, move somebody who gets to your website or converts into a lead through the funnel,
Right.
but actually finding people that can be creative and find new channels or find arbitrage opportunity in common channels to actually get people to your website in the first place. Mm-hmm. And again, create that awareness and create that demand is the toughest part. And so I look for somebody that's had experience in finding creative ways to actually like create that demand from scratch, and then find ways to turn that into something that's more scalable. And then I'd say more soft skills, just curiosity and hungry, and the ability to back up all their efforts with math. And that's just where I think that people that work for maybe the number 2 player in the space, or like I've had to do at times, maybe starting with like the number 50 player in the space.
Yeah.
You have a smaller budget and a smaller team or no team, and you just have to get really creative on the ways or the channels or the partners that you're involving to help create that demand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there certain qualities that you've noticed working with different demand generation leaders across the years that separates like the good from great ones?
I think it's those, again, it's that curiosity, and those that just, I think, are naturally drawn to the space. They don't necessarily view it just as like a job, and you don't have to like work all the time, but like you just get enjoyment from it. And so therefore you're going to be looking around to see what others are doing, and like not just in your space, but just more broadly. Mm-hmm. So for example, at ShipBob and then BigCommerce, I was in the e-commerce, it's e-commerce SaaS, more or less, or B2B e-commerce. But are you looking at what other people are doing in the B2B space? Are you looking at what direct marketers are doing? Are you looking at what direct-to-consumer brands are doing? Are you looking at what YouTube stars and influencers are doing? And then also, can you combine some of their efforts and what they're doing into maybe some of your strategy, or leveraging like those several channels together?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's awesome. That's some great insight. So we have another question from Kelly Pugh, or Pug. Where do you think SDRs should live within marketing or sales, or both? And why do you think that?
I think it depends on the broader structure of the sales team. Also depends on the marketing leader and the sales leader. So for example, at ShipBob, we have a rather large outbound SDR or BDR team. And then we also have our inbound BDR team.
Okay.
And so in that case, I think it makes, and also we have an extremely strong head of sales. And so in that case, I think that it makes sense to roll up to sales, because the woman who is leading all of the SDRs, she can help train all of them together. While they might utilize different cadences or methods of operation, or what they're held accountable for. For example, like inbound might have a 5x quota compared to outbound, because they're getting, handed over warm and hot leads.
Right.
I think it makes sense, and they'll use a lot of the same tracking functionality, and again, it just makes sense there. If you only have, I've worked at places where pretty much everything is driven by inbound and by marketing.
Yeah.
If you have a marketing leader that has some sales background or understands like the sales metrics and can actually get on the phone and help train people, or at least hire the people that can put them in a position to succeed, then I think it makes sense for marketing. I guess from my experience, I think a lot of times it makes sense to live in sales, and then it's like that dotted line to marketing, and you're consistently meeting with them, and you're extremely transparent in both directions with the data and the numbers that you're looking at, so everything's aligned. I think that's the most important thing, outside of even like reporting structure, is, are you both looking at the same data? Because if marketing's looking at one set of data, and especially if it's in a different platform, and sales is looking at something else, like there's always going to be some conflict. Whereas if you're like, okay, everything lives, let's say, in Salesforce, and it's not perfect, but at least it's a place that we can both agree on, and then start actioning off of that data. I think that's what will put people in a much better position.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. We had to transition ourselves from outbound focused, where the SDRs were mainly focused on outreach, and then we started seeing an influx of inbound, and had to kind of pivot and transition them to the marketing org and be really in tune with them. Do you have any tips for teams that are looking to improve alignment between the marketing and sales and the SDR function?
Again, I think it's that transparency in data. It's aligning on the goals in advance. I think it's sharing information in both directions. And so, bringing in the inbound team or the SDR team or BDR team into what you're doing to actually drive the traffic in the first place. I think that context helps, and maybe getting feedback from them on which of these leads and maybe what channels are performing best. And so that way they're giving you feedback, and then you can give them feedback as well. And so as long as you guys are all looking at like the same data sets, that's helpful. I like it when I jump on a lot of sales calls, so I know that helps me a lot in just thinking through like what are the actual pain points in the words that people are using. And I think having marketers shadow salespeople and listen in on calls is helpful. We use a product called Chorus.
Okay.
And that's really helpful as well, because it's one of those, AI sales recorder tools. But it's actually pretty good because it transcribes everything. And so you can create a bunch of tags. So for example, if there's a competitor, or if there's like a pain point or something like that you want to highlight, or for an example for us, something we're working on is there's like a big integration that we're pushing out. Right. And so we want to find everybody that's spoken about that integration or that specific brand. And so you can just create tags and get emails every single day of like, okay, they mentioned, this isn't the company, but like, let's say HubSpot, or they mentioned email marketing software. And so that way you can actually listen to what the salesperson is talking about, and, what the prospect is saying and how they're framing it, and feeding that up into like what you're doing from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. We kind of do a similar approach. We use Gong here. And we just went through a website revamp, and it was hugely beneficial to put together the best calls in our own library for the team to kind of study and research and pull out those insights and aggregate trends across all of those calls. So
that's awesome. I like it.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right. Last question from Kelly. This is a fun one. What's the most creative campaign you've launched and that you're proud of, and why is that? I know there's probably thousands that you've launched, but if there's one that triggers, would love to hear about it.
Let's see. The most creative campaign, I'll grab one that I'm rather proud of, and maybe while I'm talking, I'll think of other stuff. But I was consulting for a company called Sign Now, and they were an electronic signature tool, or e-signature tool.
Okay.
But what they did, what their founder, Chris Hawkins, who's just very smart and I think very forward thinking, he actually wanted to launch like an online notarization tool. And sadly, it ended up failing, I think because they were way too early. And why were they way too early? Well, he wrote the first book on electronic notarization. He got that in Amazon to help start drumming up some interest. And he actually used that to help, I believe it was in the state of Virginia. He actually worked with the state legislature and the government over there to get electronic notarizations passed. And so he was the one that really helped start the whole process of electronic notarization by getting at least one state to approve it, similar to what you're seeing with like sports gambling. I think it was New Jersey, and then Nevada, and then it's just the dominoes are just getting knocked down. And so along with the electronic signature tool, which even at that time there wasn't like a whole lot of like search or demand for that. With electronic notarization, there was zero search. Like nobody was searching for it. If he was like, hey Casey, here's $1 million a month to go spend on like paid ads and all the SEO and content help you need, I would have just been sitting there with like $1 million at the end of the month because nobody was searching for it.
Right.
It's like, okay, how can we create some demand? But people are searching for notaries, and very few people like the notarization process. And so, okay, how can we get in front of people that have strong intent for a notarization or for a notary? And so we actually created like a Yelp for notaries website. And so because the notary information, a lot of it in a lot of the different states, it's public knowledge. And so we created, again, this whole Yelp website. You can bucket it by state, by city, by county, by certain main demographic hubs. And then we injected it. I can't recall how many notaries we had on there, but hundreds of thousands of notary listings. And so people were searching for like notary near me, or notary in LA, or notary in California. That would be there. And then also when people were Googling their own name, they'd start seeing their profiles. And so we worked pretty hard to like help a lot of these enrich this data as much as possible. And so that like, let's say Kelly was a notary and she searched for her own name, that would pop up. And so then she could claim her profile. And a lot of these notaries, they don't have their own websites. And so it's like, how can you use this profile as a way to like promote yourself and drive engagement? Because we'd have people's phone numbers and emails on there if we had access to it. And that really helped a lot. And so pretty quickly we were able to drive hundreds of thousands of visitors every single month, and then throughout the funnel, so for leads and conversions, because again, people didn't know that the online notaries were a thing. And so then we would kind of disrupt their flow to inject that and like try to convert them from there.
That's amazing. That's super creative and seems to be very effective, and definitely filling a gap that was not filled before. I would say it sounds simple, but it must have been very complex in terms of like building that site and like all of that. That must have took a lot of effort. But then how did you get the word out there for those notary people to apply and create their own profile?
It was all organic. And so we focused all of our efforts on, after we built it, because you're right, there's a lot of, we took a lot, there's a lot of directory sites out there. Right. And so we took the best of what we liked across a handful of them, and then just made sure when we built it, we took SEO in mind, so that we could rank again for like the location-based terms and also the individual profile terms. And then therefore when people were searching for themselves, because this is when Facebook was still like, I don't know, I guess relatively newish. People are always searching for their names. And so they would find themselves and often like claim the profile that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Next question we have from Zach Grove. What's one B2B growth strategy that you think most marketers overlook or undervalue this year?
I think a lot of people still ignore SEO. It takes, like, I think everybody's excuse is, well, it takes a while and I need results today.
Right.
Well, I think if you, especially if you have the budget, if you bring in like the right people to help you get started, you can actually drive results pretty quickly. And again, it depends on like the size of the company. But I think people still often overlook, well, real quick on the SEO front, Google Webmaster Tools or Google Search Console is such an underappreciated tool that's completely free. Like I find all of, I guess fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not really in the weeds of like SEO anymore, but like that was always my go-to tool because there's so much untapped, especially because years ago, which some of you may or may not remember, Google actually used to expose all search volume for organic search in Google Analytics. Right. And then they ripped that out, and you only got your paid search data. But in Google Search Console, you can actually extrapolate a lot of like the search volume, the search queries, and what you're ranking for, and like what your position rank is. And so it helps a lot in like where you should actually prioritize. So that's one spot. And then another is utilizing your paid information to feed into your SEO strategy. I think the worst part about paid is you can get stuck on the paid treadmill, and it's really expensive, and it's tough to get off. It's like this gateway drug. But one of the beauties of it is the feedback loop is often very short and very tight, and then you can feed that data into other channels. And so utilizing that PPC data in your SEO strategy.
Yep. Those are two things that I think might not seem as attractive as some of the newer trends, but are definitely underestimated in terms of, and can get overlooked, not having an SEO strategy that you continue to build on, maintain, optimize, pull from paid strategies. Yeah, definitely something I see where people, if they aren't finding immediate value and can't attribute revenue to it immediately, they start to go away from it. And then they look back a year later and regret that their CPA from their paid strategies and paid channels just keeps increasing, and they have no way to depend on another channel like organic that builds up over time. And you get exponential value over time. So that's a great tip.
I think something that a lot of people, and I guess I still make this mistake, but I especially made it earlier in my career, is like chasing the shiny penny versus thinking through like, what is a channel that is guaranteed to perform? It's just a question of at what level will it perform. And so depending on your industry, for and looking around at your competitors, like you don't always need to completely recreate the wheel and come in with some crazy influencer plus like TikTok strategy or something like that. Like, is organic a proven channel? Is SEO a proven channel for your industry, or is paid search a proven channel for your industry? Is affiliate a proven channel for your industry? Again, that doesn't mean don't get creative and start thinking outside the box, because you probably you don't have the budget of the team size or the experience to compete with the people that are like owning those results.
Right.
But where is there like a proven channel? Because like prioritization and like speed to performance is so key for startups to succeed. And so you need to like choose wisely, like not just at the beginning, but throughout the lifetime of the company.
That makes sense. Yeah. And just go deep and double down within those efforts and get creative within those bounds. Yeah, that makes total sense. All right. Next one, we got a question from Deb. How do you attribute content marketing to revenue? So I think this is a good follow-up from our last conversation around SEO, but how do you like to attribute content marketing to dollars?
So I know that content marketing drives a lot more value than maybe we give it credit for, at least like in the efforts over at ShipBob, and I know definitely in BigCommerce. But we often tie in, we focus our content marketing to justify budget or increasing budget over time to the performance of organic.
Yeah.
Because you can't just be doing it to drive awareness or traffic if it's not generating those leads, and if those leads are not converting into SQLs or opportunities, and if those SQLs or opportunities are not converting into closed won deals, and if those closed won deals are not at the customer value that you're comfortable with, and therefore the revenue and the payback that you like, then why are you doing it at all?
Right.
And so I think the best way and the easiest way to continue to get more budget to spend on content marketing or to add to the team is to tie it to what you're doing from an organic perspective and make sure you're tracking that funnel.
Yeah.
And using that to justify it.
Yeah. I think the key word you said there is tracking, making sure you have some system or framework to tag your content marketing efforts, whether you're creating campaigns where opportunities, you can see that they have there's a correlation between them engaging with that piece of content in an email or a download or something like that. And then just making sure you label things and tag things and have a framework for that from the beginning is definitely, I think, a way for you to track it throughout the funnel. And in our space, multi-touch, long sales journeys, they're going to be interacting with a ton of different content. And if you have those campaign structures in Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using, you're going to be able to see all the different content that they're interacting with. So yeah, some great insight there. To follow up, Deb also had another question, pretty technical here. If you were to fix conversion rate for your site, what would be your first three steps, and how would you approach that?
I would Slack the guy on my team that owns this, and then I would chill, and then I'd ask what the results were.
Nice.
Again, it starts with data. Like, that's honestly actually what I would do. But
yeah.
The guy on my team who owns conversion rate and the website experience for us, I was fortunate to work with him at BigCommerce as well. But when he joined us at ShipBob, talking back to making sure you've got your tracking in place, like there's no way that this is like enjoyable for him. But for the first 2.5 months, it was really like, is our analytics and our analytics solutions in place accurate? Are they tracking right? Are they talking to all of our systems? And then are they talking to our systems that we can like action off of, or we can utilize to help with the funnel? And so what does that mean? And so we use Google Analytics, we use Google Tag Manager, of course, so we don't have to involve the developers as often. We use Visible, and Visible we have syncing with Salesforce. And so we need all of those to talk to each other. And then also based off of some of these, let's say, event triggers, we have certain lead forms or certain lead magnets or intercom or a solution called Pendo. Right. And those things will pop up or act differently based off of like some of the data we have internally. But it's making sure that we have all of that in place, because then, and again, the goal is not for it to be 100% accurate, but is it accurate enough so that you can actually action off of this and that you have confidence in this? And so the way I viewed it is like we were flying kind of blindish. Like we knew more or less like what was going to move the needle, and like we were improving, let's say, top of funnel and like revenue, but like our confidence to scale and to be able to like fully run was not there yet until we had all of our data in place. Right. And so once that was in place, then we could actually start experimenting and running tests. Again, that takes a lot of time, and I was like, well, we can't just sit here and wait for that to happen. And so I would focus on what are the most highly trafficked parts of the website. And if you have some information on the funnel, like what are the biggest drop-off points? And so it's often like the homepage, the pricing page, and the checkout page. Right. Like there's so much other stuff you can do with conversion rate optimization, which is like see how people are navigating, let's say, horizontally through the website, such as like people who go to, let's say, the features page are much more likely to convert once they get to the pricing page. But most people don't have the traffic or the volume to get there. And so where do you actually have volume that will provide like statistically significant data? And then again, that's often the homepage, the pricing page, and then hopefully your conversion page.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. I think that goes similar to our last question about how you have to have the infrastructure to be able to analyze things effectively, or else you're going to be kind of going blind. So steps 1, 2, 3, make sure you have the infrastructure set up to know what success looks like for your efforts, your CRO efforts, and how you're going to measure it. Even first steps to set that up before you can start creating your hypotheses and assumptions. So,
and another item too is go through the experience yourself. Like I do this often. It was the first thing I did when I was talking to ShipBob was like, sign up for a demo, sign up for a trial. What is the experience? Are things breaking? Do it on your phone. Yeah. How fast does it take? How long does it take for a sales rep to call you if they're supposed to? Try to put in your credit card. A big thing for us at BigCommerce, a huge one that we had was like the ability to pay on mobile, like to sign up, because we were like, well, most people don't want to run their e-commerce platform or e-commerce site, on their phone, which is true. Yeah. But some people do, and some people will convert on mobile. And it was so difficult for people on mobile to actually give us their credit card. It was like, we'd have people internally trying to do it, and they're like, I can't find it. And so it's like just little things like that, like make it easy for people to check out, go through, try to pay. Does it reject? What does the post conversion experience look like? So again, just go through it manually and do that, at least once a quarter.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think blind buying or blind shopping on your site, and even going through, if you're more B2B SaaS, like going through that whole process often is super insightful to know where the gaps are in the funnel to tighten things up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Next one. We got a question from Nihal. I hope I'm saying that right. How can bootstrap companies allocate budget for digital advertising when their competitors are popular brands and well-funded companies? So what do you do when you have limited resources as a startup? What would you say?
So that's where, for example, with like the Yelp for Notary site that we built, we had just a much smaller budget. Again, that was partially because there was no search there, but even in like the e-signature space, there were the Echo signs and Docu signs of the world that just had infinitely more budget. And so it's getting creative in what you can do. Like you mentioned Maven Link earlier, we had the same problem there. We were in the project management space, which was just flooded with competitors.
Right.
Some of who spent a ton of money, like the Boxes of the world. Some who didn't spend as much money, but just dominated SEO, like Basecamp. And so we started looking at alternative channels. Like it was actually Google Apps, which now is, I think, Google for Business or something, essentially like the Gmail suite.
Yeah.
They used to have this huge marketplace. It's sad that it's pretty much died, but they had this huge marketplace, the Google Apps marketplace, not for your phone, but for desktop. And they were actually spending ad dollars to get people to their apps marketplace. And so what we did there was we did everything we could, and that's a much longer answer, but so that we could rank #1 for project management within the Google Apps marketplace. And then we actually held the #1 spot in the entire apps marketplace for installs for, I think, close to 3 years. And that was huge because Google, which has seemingly unlimited budget, they were actually paying themselves to drive traffic to the apps marketplace. And so people would search for like project management software, project management apps. The top result would be project management apps, and then it'd go to the Google Apps marketplace, and we were the top listing there. And we didn't pay anything for that. They kept talking about rev share, but we ended up that never materialized. That kind of billing stuff always seems like a pain. And so we got so much traffic there. And what was cool there in that marketplace was, instead of somebody coming in and putting like whatever KC1234 at hotmail.com, and you think it's like a spam lead, everybody who went through the apps marketplace actually had to sign in through their business Gmail account, and it would like authenticate it through the whole like Google Apps and Gmail experience. And so like we knew these leads were like crazy high quality. We had actually, let me rephrase that. We had no idea the gold mine that we had at the time because like these were so high quality leads, because it was always also like the admin of the account, which especially then and still to today, it's often like a founder. And I guess now with the bigger businesses, it might be, the head of IT or something like that. Yeah. But it's still like, it's such a high quality lead. And so anyways, like, we didn't have money for the digital advertising. Or if we did, it was very small, but we'd have just been flushing it down the toilet. And so it's like, okay, how can we still get that type of traffic and find, kind of a more creative solution around that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, we got time for one last question. It's going to be from one of our anonymous submitters. For an aspiring CMO, and you yourself as a CMO, what would be your #1 tip for vertical career advancement in SaaS marketing?
What is vertical career advancement? Basically getting promoted?
Yeah.
I'd say tie as much as you can to revenue. Like you've got to, especially just as like the marketing roles just evolve. If what you're doing from a marketing standpoint is not driving revenue, it's like maybe it's providing some value to the company, but like it's just going to slow you down. And so work very closely with the sales team, create a great relationship with your counterpart over there or the sales leaders, learn from them. Again, be curious with that, but like back it up with data, make sure everybody's aligned with the data that you're looking at. Nothing is worse than marketers saying, look at all my leads. And then sales is like, look at all my revenues. And there's so much that happens in the middle. Like you should all align on everything throughout the funnel and then back up your efforts in the fact that and again, using the same data sets that your CFO and your CEO and your head of sales are using, or maybe it's a startup or a smaller company, and so that's just like 1 or 2 people. But make sure you're all using the same data sets and back it up and prove that what you're doing is driving revenue.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Well, that's all the time we have for questions, Casey. I know you had some, I wanted to give you a quick moment to plug anything if you had anything going on that you wanted to promote.
Well, the first question helped me plug that we're hiring. And so always hiring. You go to shipbob.com/careers. You can always email me, carmstrong@shipbob.com. And for any of you that are needing help in the e-commerce space and e-commerce fulfillment space, feel free to hit us up. Come over to shipbob.com. We've got close to 20 fulfillment centers around the world, and we're launching new ones every month. And we keep expanding internationally as well. So a lot of exciting stuff going on.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining on the show. That's Society AMAs, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.